Hope you all enjoy the little break. Thanks to the generosity of our Miss Wong. I was being too mean on allowing only 30 minutes. Okay, let me see. I believe we're all here. Our staff is here as well. Just a quick check-in with Christina Kitamura. Do we still have a quorum? Am I right?
Let me determine that.
Just making sure. Just making sure. Promise you, I'm not gonna sing.
We have all 9 members with us.
Perfect. That's really good. Okay, then let's officially resume our Board of Behavioral Sciences. Today is November 5th. Right now it's 1:02 p.m. My name is Max Disposti. I'm the board chair of the Board of Behavioral Sciences, pronounced him as, and we are proceeding with our agenda item. I believe we're on agenda items 20. And Roseanne was about to introduce the discussion and possible action on amendments regarding supervision via video conferencing. Am I correct, Roseanne?
You are
Okay.
correct, Max. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this discussion will focus on whether supervision via video conferencing should continue to be allowed only in exempt settings, or if it should be allowed in all settings, as it was with the COVID waivers that we had. That the one that we have currently in process expires on December 31st of 2021. And so at that time, the law would revert back to the one that we had in place for several years pre-COVID, where you can only do supervision via video conferencing if you're in an exempt setting. So the telehealth committee took an extensive look at this and discussed it at length, and brought forth a proposal that will be considered today. And so in coming to this proposal, the telehealth committee, they decided that they wanted to do the surveys that you saw earlier today. And then they considered 2 options. One option was 50% in-person supervision required. And option 2, which is the proposal that moved forward for consideration today, was supervision via video conferencing allowed with first meeting in person. And so that's the proposal you'll see today. And in coming to this, the committee looked at a lot of different research. Like I mentioned, the surveys, they did some looking at what other states are doing. Other states are really in flux on this issue right now too. And so what this proposal that you're going to discuss today does is the following. It clarifies that face-to-face direct supervisor contact means either in person or via 2-way real-time video conferencing. It requires that a supervisor must conduct an initial in-person meeting with a supervisee within 60 days of commencement of any supervision with a new supervisee in all settings. And so the purpose of the in-person meeting is to determine whether or not the person is appropriate for supervision via video conferencing. And the reason we said it was within 60 days instead of at the first meeting is because the supervision regulations, which are coming into effect in a few months, those regulations require a few other supervision forms between the supervisee and the supervisor to be worked out within 60 days of beginning supervision with a new person. And so it was thought that that assessment might be convenient to have that assessment take place at the same time. It requires that during the initial in-person meeting, the supervisor needs to assess the appropriateness of allowing the supervisee to gain experience hours via telehealth, and also the appropriateness of the supervisee to receive supervision via video conferencing and to document their findings. And then we also included a sunset date for the initial in-person meeting requirement of January 1, 2025. And the reason for that was to acknowledge that there's still some considerations out there and some work to be done on this topic. There's a lot of moving parts with telehealth in terms, it raises a lot of different questions about what's appropriate in terms of settings and where the therapist can be. where the client can be, what's appropriate, what's not. And so the telehealth committee has a lot of things to continue discussing. And so the sunset date for the in-person meeting would be January 1, 2025, at which point the board would give the board plenty of time to pursue additional legislation to either extend that date or make other changes or fine-tuning as needed to the provision. And this is because the supervision via video conferencing really has some implications for out-of-state practice. So right now, supervision via video conferencing in non-exempt settings, if somebody's practicing out of state, they have to be meeting in person with their supervisor. So it's really done what the effect has been, good or bad, that's open for debate, is that people need to be located in California to do supervision if they're in a private practice. And so the telehealth committee still wants to take a look at that. Also, where should the supervisee be located when therapy is taking place via telehealth? Does the board want to weigh in on it, or the committee want to weigh in on that? So those are some of the future issues that will be discussed. But for today, we have the proposal, and it's shown in attachment A, and I will open that up for discussion.
Wonderful, wonderful, Roseanne. Thank you. Okay. This is a discussion, so not questions and only. And so I see Christina.
Hi, it's me again. So I know I always have something to say.
Good,
Well,
good.
yeah, no, it will be good. So I want to supplement, some of the information as well. I think, so the current waiver to allow video conferencing of supervision has been extended till the end of the year. And it has, and it's indicated that this is it. There going to be no more extension. So I want to, maybe actually I can make it a question instead of me saying it. I can probably go back to Roseanne and say, now, in that sense, what will happen, to video conferencing, when January 1st, 2022 comes?
So right now, we have the waiver in effect. The department has indicated that it is not going to extend the waiver any further. And so things are going back to normal. So we have to follow the law. We can't not follow the law without a law change. And so this proposal is a legislative proposal that would need to go through the process. And so if the board voted today to pursue this legislative proposal, we would try to pursue it as urgency legislation if that's what the board desired. However, it still has to go through the regular legislative process. We have to find an author that's willing to run it as urgency legislation. And so we would attempt to do that. If it was successful, it would need a 2/3 vote to go through both houses. And then it would become effective immediately upon signing by the governor. So typically, we haven't run a lot of urgency legislation in my time here. I think that we did run one many years ago that I think went through urgency and it became effective in July or August, because it still has to go through all of the committees in the assembly, all of the committees in the Senate, and then go to the governor. So it's still a process. The legislative process takes time, and that's by design. One other thing that I will say regarding the waivers, the reason I think that the waivers are kind of winding down, typically DCA doesn't even have authority for law waivers either. The law waivers are in effect due to the state of emergency that was declared. The governor was able to confer with the department, or to grant the department director ability to grant waivers. So once those the state of emergency is over, and who knows when that will be, there's not even the ability to do that anymore. And so that's why you're seeing these wind down, and we're working as diligently as possible to try to move this forward. But a law change is complex, and so that's where we're at right now.
Thanks, Roseanne. So the message is that we have been trying to make regulatory changes as fast as we can. this is actually, I think it's a very important message that, that Roseanne, and the staff, and even the board, want to, speak directly to our, our board members and also, to the stakeholders and the public, because I think, we really share a lot of the sentiment, that brought to the committee meeting, and knowing just how hard it is, and how much it affect them, when they are not allowed, when the day, of the video conferencing, by, for supervision, will terminate. And so, we understand the hardship, and I'm actually really surprised and very glad that actually the ZA, further extended, so it was, I think the advocacy worked, but at the same time, I think it's, also very important that, as a board, that we're really trying, as much as we can, as fast as we can, to make regulatory changes. And so, so this is why, we're here. And so I think, as the committee, as a telehealth committee chair, then I want to give this information to the board member also. And so, so that, that it's not that we ignore, the hardship of the people, and for the associates, but really this is the best we could do. And it's really because of, Roseanne being so proactive and, and the very active participation for the stakeholders. And that's why we have that, that's a legislative proposal in front of you. So I will stop talking and let you guys discuss.
Thank you, Christine. I see Kelly and then Susan.
So I kind of like option 2, and here's why. In California is a Western state. As you get closer to these sort of liminal areas on the border, particularly in Southeastern California and Northern California, they become rural areas. And telehealth, it's very difficult to get clinicians to go to those areas in the first place. It's important that we do what we can to have good mental health clinicians be able to exercise their training and education in those areas. So I sort of am leaning toward option 2, which seems to be the most efficient and cogent way to deal with this. The clinician can go to school through telehealth. They can get psychiatric care through telehealth. They can talk to people through telehealth. They can get continuing education through telehealth. It doesn't really make sense that we kind of drop the wall and say, no, you can't get supervised through telehealth. So I'm in favor of option 2, and that's my position.
Thank you, Kelly. Anyone? Oh, sorry, Susan.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Roseanne, if we don't go for urgency, what happens in January?
If we don't go for urgency, if we don't get an urgency bill, then it would go through it would be a regular bill, and it would go into effect if it passed and was signed by the governor, it would go into effect in January 2023. So urgency would be a way to possibly speed up the effective date a few months if the board wishes. However, it is contingent on a lawmaker being willing to carry it as urgent legislation. So it doesn't 100% guarantee that we will get it as an urgency measure.
Okay, but what you're saying is if it's not urgency, then it goes back to in 2023, they could operate in non-exempt settings, etc.
They could do so if the law that would allow supervision via video conferencing in non-exempt settings, yes, could be via video conferencing beginning January 1, 2023 without urgency legislation.
Thank you, Roseanne. I don't see anyone else at the moment. I would like to actually open to the public before we even move a motion, just to see. I'm sure there are some comments coming from them. So, moderator, can you please open for us? Thank you.
Certainly, this is the moderator, and I have opened the Q&A feature for public comment on this issue. If you'd like to make a comment, please click the Q&A icon, typically at the bottom right of your screen, in the Ask field, type comment and click send, and then we will take comments in the order received, and I will send an unmute request. You can click unmute me, and then you will have 1 minute to speak, and I will give you a 15-second warning. And we do have a number of commenters waiting. We will begin with Jennifer Alley. One moment while I find your unmute, send the unmute request. And just so you know, we are not utilizing the raise hand feature at this time. If you'd like to make a comment, you can find the Q&A box and type the word comment and hit send. So Jennifer, I have sent your request to unmute.
Good afternoon. This is Jennifer Alley with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. I'd like to thank the BBS leadership and their staff for working to extend the waiver, the remote supervision waiver, until December 31st, 2021. And we support the legislative proposal moving forward with urgency. You know, the impact on pre-licensees and their patients is a little bit unknown. CAMP is working to identify ways to educate our members to plan and prepare for the change effective January 1st. You know, we don't want the changes in supervision to impact their ability to complete their clinical hours or cause any disruptions in the care that their patients currently receive. And we look forward to partnering with the BBS on this issue moving forward. Thank
15
you.
seconds.
Thank you.
All right, our next commenter is Ben Caldwell. Ben, I will send a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute.
Ben Caldwell, licensed MFT. Thanks to the board and staff for your work on this proposal. I would strongly urge a yes vote and also urge you to reconsider the need for an in-person meeting. It's not required for clinical care via telehealth and shouldn't be needed for supervision either. If you do decide to move forward with the in-person meeting requirement, I'd ask that you include language allowing exceptions to that requirement when such an exception would be consistent with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Tony Rumanier is a psychologist with a research focus on clinical supervision. He was here this morning but couldn't stay through the afternoon, so he asked me to say the following on his behalf. Online supervision allows trainees and associates to be matched with supervisors who are specialists in specific areas of clinical work, such as eating disorders or veterans issues, but live in geographically distant areas. If an initial in-person meeting is required, then this kind of sorting by specialization will not be
15
possible,
seconds.
significantly restricting opportunities for specialized clinical training without apparent benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
And our next request for public comment comes from Rebecca Gonzalez. Rebecca, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute.
Thank you. Rebecca Gonzalez, NASW California. Want to thank the board for their collaboration on this issue. And I really want to second what Ben said about the ADA issue and an exception for those types of cases, which I think is really crucially important. I'm also a little curious, maybe should have brought this up before, but since we are talking about this in-person or initial in-person requirement in all settings, such as exempt settings, I'm a little worried about the disruption that might cause there, since that is a change in the requirements that they've had in the past. So I just want you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And our next commenter is Del Royer. Del, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute.
Hi, my name is Del Royer. I'm an LCSW here in California. I work for a for-profit online platform substance abuse treatment program called Lion Rock Recovery Services. I just wanted to kind of thank everybody for the work that they've done on this particular regulations, but also wanted to kind of vote yes on the initial visit option because that's really the only one we could incorporate in our hiring process, you know, for the associates, because even though we are in California, we still cover quite a catchment area between Southern and Northern California. So finding opportunities for in-person supervision is a little bit difficult. It's a lot easier if we only have to do it one time and we can do it, you know, initially during the hiring process.
15 seconds.
We do have, employ associates with full benefits, you know, full salary. And so we'd like to kind of continue to be able to do that as part of our succession planning and training new employees.
And our
Thank you.
next,
Thanks.
certainly. The next request from comment comes from someone presenting as Gabe. Gabe, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute.
My name is Gabe Kenny. I'm an associate MFT in California, and I also urge a yes vote to move ahead with the proposal for legislation to make telehealth supervision available across all work settings, including private practice, without the stipulation for first meeting in person. Forcing a first in-person meeting seems to not make much sense to me. By reducing the range of options and opportunity for both sides due to potential logistical blocks, it only potentially inhibits an otherwise mutually beneficial supervisor-supervisee relationship from being able to grow and form in the first place. Initiation and constant access of supervision at a remote distance makes the most sense, affords the greatest range of options for both parties, and affords the most flexibility. And it should also be said, safety in this trying time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next commenter is Reyna Bonacio. Reyna, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute for speaking time.
Hi, my name is Reyna Bonacio. I'm an associate clinical social worker and I'm legally blind. I'm very grateful for the waiver allowing video supervision of associates. I tried long and hard and I was unable to find employment where I would be supervised by an LCSW in person in a position that doesn't require a driver's license. However, because of the waiver, I've been able to work for a for-profit company that provides high quality services and excellent supervision. So just as telehealth removes barriers to mental health services, video supervision removes barriers to supervised experience required for licensure. Thank you for your consideration and thank you for all your hard work on these matters.
Thank you. Any?
My apologies. The next request for comment comes from Kelly Reyes. Kelly, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute of speaking time.
Reyes. I'm the registered AMFT, and I also urge a yes vote to move ahead with the proposal for legislation to make telehealth supervision available across all settings, and also removing the meeting in person initially. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And our next request for comment comes from Laura Sylvester. Laura, I will be sending you a request to unmute and you will have 1 minute speaking time.
Yes. Thank you for having us here. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Northern California, and I'm also a clinical supervisor. Thank you for taking the time for us being able to bring forth our concerns and issues. I strongly urge a yes vote and also the removal of the first person meeting requirement. I've participated in the surveys, and over the last almost 2 years, we've proven how effective video supervision can be. And being able to see that continue would be of utmost importance. Thank you for your time.
And our next request for comment comes from Brian Davis. Brian, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute speaking time.
MFT. Pending
Yes, you're
registration.
unmuted.
I'd like to add. Okay. So my name is Brian. I'm a pre-MFT pending registration, and I'd like to advocate and urge a yes vote to move ahead with making telehealth supervision available across all work settings. It makes sense, it works, and I believe it allows us a better opportunity to navigate the challenges moving ahead in the future. Thank you all for your time, work, and consideration.
Thank you.
And the next request for comment comes from Kurt Woodhelm. Kurt, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute speaking time.
Hi, Kurt Woodhelm, LMFT. I also would like to see the board go yes with urgency with the removal of the in-person requirement. not only for our workforce that has ADA issues, but also in being able to access clinicians who come from diverse backgrounds, especially with upcoming projections of decreases in the mental health workforce, and the potential for any future pandemics to have an ease of being able to hire clinicians at those times.
And thank you.
Thank you.
And our next request for comment comes from Emily Remba. Emily, I will be sending a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 1 minute time.
Hi, my name is Emily Remba. I'm an LCSW. I own a group psychotherapy practice in San Diego, specializing in reproductive mental health. I also urge a yes vote to move ahead with the proposal for legislation to make telehealth supervision across all work settings available and without an in-person requirement. I also request that we find a sponsor who can move this legislation through urgently to close the gap that will occur because of the waiver expiration. Thank you for all of your hard work on this.
And at this point, we do have a couple of people with raised hands, so I'd like to remind you all that the Q&A box is at the lower right corner of your screen. You can click in the text box, hit the word comment and click send. I see a comment from Robert Scherer. Robert, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so you can read your comment aloud, and you will have 1 minute in which to speak. And Robert, did you get your request to unmute? Okay, it may be that Robert is unable to speak. Would the chair like me to read the comment aloud or skip on to the next person?
Well, since there is a comment at this point, they tried to get in, maybe we should read it. Thank you.
Certainly. The comment is from Robert Scherer, LMFT. I appreciate exploring this option and strongly encourage a yes vote for telesupervision in all settings and removing the initial in-person meeting. Working in a for-profit SUD setting, telesupervision is not offered by my company, but for the last 20 months has opened doors for my supervisees who otherwise could not find a supervisor previously. The pandemic has shown how effective telesupervision can be, and I ask that we don't penalize supervisees based on their place of employment.
Thank you for reading the comment.
You're welcome. And our next commenter is Kayla Dale. Kayla, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 1 minute to speak. And Kayla, did you see the request unmute come through? All right, again, Kayla has typed her comment in if you'd like for me to read that.
Sure, thank you.
Kayla says, I would like to add my support and urge a vote yes to allow continued telehealth supervision across all work settings going forward. Our next commenter is Holland Pavlous. And Holland, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone. Oh, I do not see Holland in our attendee list any longer. The comment that Holland had typed in was just comment. So I think we're going to have to be patient and see if Holland can get back in. Oh, okay. Holland has found his way back. Let's see. Holland, I'm sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
So Hi, so my name is Holland Pavlous. I'm an associate professional clinical counselor, and I also urge a yes vote to move ahead with the proposal for legislation to make telehealth supervision available across all work settings and without an in-person requirement. And I thank you very much for listening to me for this comment. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
And at this point, I do believe we got to everyone who had requested public comment. Shall I close out the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just want to also thank again our stakeholders and the public for participating. It really makes a difference. And we appreciate you taking the time from your work schedule and to come and speak to the board. We always encourage and we're happy to see when people are coming forward. So thank you again. And going back to the board, I saw a couple hands raised. Christina, one.
So thank you. So it looks like to me that, that the proposal itself is, it's acceptable, but then the area to discuss is really about the in-person versus not in-person. So without the in-person, we get it. Now, the in-person part of it, if we vote for the in-person, then we will be talking about whether, there is the exception, right? So I think that is just kind of like, the exception to, to maybe have, inconsistent with the, the ADA criteria. So I'm thinking that, that Roseanne, I think when we were in the discussion, at the telehealth committee, there's a very, apart from just the, coming from the perspective of the supervisor, we totally get it, right? That, the urge to remove it because, you guys may not, or may not be able, to make sense. But I think there is some very important factor, also, in consideration of, in consideration of completely, no in person, right? There's something to do with the business, right? And the possible out-of-state practice. Maybe Roseanne, if you recall that piece of that information, maybe we can share with the board also.
Yeah, and so it was really the in-person meeting came from the public protection concern is everybody is there an appropriate, is that particular supervisee appropriate for telehealth? So the committee discussed and felt that an in-person meeting would allow a better assessment. There's also implications for, if you have no in-person requirement, then it is possible you can get people practicing, registering here and practicing from out of state. So maybe not being as familiar with California, although they would still be required to pass our exams. So there's the thought that initial in-person meeting, it kind of keeps them practicing in the state, and we can also continue to work to kind of set some parameters in law about that we aren't ready to set quite yet because more discussion is needed. And then there's just looking at it from the public protection side and weighing. And so I think that's what the board needs to do today, is weigh, is that in-person meeting really essential or not? What will companies do if the person's not appropriate and they don't have the setup to do in person? Is that a consideration? What if somebody's not appropriate for in person? It kind of, I think that's the discussion needs to be had today.
I see Kelly, and then we have also Justin.
I understand that the concern about public safety, but honestly, I think I was convinced by the public commenter who indicated that she was blind. It doesn't make sense. And I would be comfortable moving forward with option A, absent an initial in-person meeting. Because even if you were intending to ensure public safety, it's sort of an oblique way of trying to ensure public safety. Here in the southeastern California, we have plenty of people that operate in and from Yuma and Mexicali and in different counties. It doesn't seem to make sense, and it doesn't seem to be a directed way to sort of ensure safety. And if we assume that the supervisor is qualified to supervise the person anyway, and they're already complying with California ethics and law and regulations, then that is a more attenuated and narrowly tailored way of ensuring safety. So, at this time, I would simply move that we adopt, well, let me make sure my motion is correct, and we can begin the discussion. I would move that we direct staff to make any discussed changes, any non-substantive changes pursuant to legislative proposal with urgency, the draft language contained in attachment A, with the elimination of the initial in-person meeting.
I second that. Justin Huft.
Thank you, Justin. I know that you, I see Roseanne for a second, and then I'll give you back the word, Roseanne.
Before we go through the motion, if that's the path that the board decides to go on, we need to look at the exact text and figure out what we want to remove for that. So let's hold off on the motion just yet to see what kind of where we're going to go. And then if we want to make a change, let's discuss the exact wording, because this is really it. Like this, that we run the bill after this. And so we don't want to have to come back and amend and slow the bill down. So
I'll respectfully withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you.
Even though we have on the floor an intent to support, with exceptions of first person contact. Justin, would you like to also add to it? Thank you.
Yeah, just two things briefly. One, I don't think it's clear how in-person meeting benefits the consumers or the trainees or the associates or the supervisors, unless we think that for whatever reason, mental health professionals can make better judgments by physically seeing someone, and I think that that's delusional. I don't know who would support that. But I also want to note, and I'm not sure if it's too late, I think that Marianne Callahan and Catherine from Rise Directory have had their hands up since before we moved back to the board speaking.
That's correct. And so, board president, you're welcome to either allow or disallow those.
I will certainly, I would like to allow that. I thought there was another board. It was Diana that was meaning to speak, and then we can go back to the public. Okay. Thank you, Justin. I don't know, for some reason I don't see those inquiries. I need to adjust my settings. So thanks again. Diana?
I'm just curious if there is a way, if we do away with this in-person requirement, is there a way to still require that assessment piece to take place? So I could still do it via teleconference, right? But I can still assess my trainees' readiness to participate in telehealth and telesupervision.
Roseanne, can you speak to that? And Christina.
So yes, there is a way we can do that with the language. And so if that's the direction the board wants to go, we can switch to looking at the exact text and figure out what words we want to take out versus leave in.
Okay, Roseanne, Christina, and then Steve. Sorry, Christina, Steve, just in case there are any additional information we need to have.
Yeah. So I want to also, for one,
Sorry.
Okay.
Christina, I asked for Steve to intervene because maybe there is something that is needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just really quick, I think with the supervision regs going in, that kind of has a language in there kind of to assess how the training should be and assessing the actual supervisees, how they're going to train the supervisees. So I'm thinking that language might already be included in the regulations that are moving forward as of the 1st. So just as a throwing, no? Okay.
No, it would, this is a much more specific requirement. The supervision assessment kind of outlines the responsibilities in it, and they are supposed to every year assess their strengths and weaknesses, but it doesn't say anything about telehealth. So I would, if the board would like to have the language, that requirement still in there, even if it's a remote assessment, I think that it still needs to be in there.
Okay. Christina.
So, and I apologize for not hearing your instruction, Max. Not that I want to stop Steve from talking. I might come from an older generation, and I've been doing supervision for a while, and I've been doing, telesupervision for a while. And I can tell you that there is a big difference, when you see the associates in persons versus telesupervision. That one I want to really reiterate, please do not disregard, in my generation, the experience There is a very big difference. And for two, I want to also be more factual. When we come back, to the research, to the survey that we have done, for those thousands of, those responses, from, other supervisors who are not here. They do talk about, I think that was we do bring that, to light. And I think, a lot of the supervisors also concur with me. And so, so I want to bring it to the board's attention, not just about right now what we need. So we need to also look at the legislative context. Way back when we have very strict, the law is written a little bit different between the non-exempt setting, which is applied to the, the business corporation, to the non-exempt setting, so, and then compared to the exempt setting is different. And so a very big part of, the consideration is because exempt setting, has the internal mechanism, to really help monitor, the quality of the service, and yet, when, in terms of like the, the video conferencing, for supervision, once we, it will be very, a very drastic change, from basically, we put all these mechanisms in place, to monitor the, the non-exempt setting and the business corporation to completely nothing, wide open. Right. And I think, we have to really balance, that part of the consumer protection. Right now, we don't see a whole lot of complaint because, it's still new. Right. And there's so many questions that we still don't know. And so really, the change, from everything has to be in person to now there's absolutely nothing in person. I'm not sure if this is actually will fit for, for everybody. And we don't know the impact, for the quality of the supervisee, and then also, the quality of the, the supervision. So I just want to bring it out there.
Thank you, Christina. And just as a reminder, since we have a couple of comments, I believe, in our public session section, so if our moderator will kindly open to them, that would be great. Thank you again.
Correct. So we have a request, or we have a raised hand from someone identifying as Marianne Callahan. Marianne, I've sent you a request to unmute your microphone. You will have 1 minute speaking time.
I apologize for raising my hand. I couldn't access a Q&A button. I just wanted to add to the request for us to allow video supervision across all settings and to not require a one-time in-person meeting. If the board decides that a one-time in-person meeting is necessary, then I would absolutely advocate in exempt settings for that to be able to be handled with one supervisor one time to assess the trainee's ability to do telesupervision, and not have to have it each time they are assigned a new supervisor, have to have another in-person meeting and another in-person meeting again and again, because I think the purpose is just to assess that the supervisee is appropriate. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And our next public commenter is Catherine, Rise Directory. Catherine, I'm sending you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 1 minute speaking time.
I also couldn't access the comment button, but I ask that the board approves the virtual supervision permanently and to not require the in-person meeting. California is huge, and that's going to greatly reduce the ability of people to start supervision in the first place. It's going to put an undue burden on people who would have to travel very, very far, when the purpose of virtual supervision is to prevent all of those barriers. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as a point of information, Leah Brew also has her hand raised. Did you want to enter that comment?
Yes, please.
All right, Leah, I have sent a request to unmute, and you'll have 1 minute.
Thank you. I know a lot of supervisees would really like to not have that one in-person meeting, but as a counselor educator and a supervisor, and having worked through COVID and meeting students online and not meeting them in person until this year, there are big differences in meeting with people in person. We are preparing them to be licensed both in person and online, and we need to make sure that their in-person energy, presentation, everything is appropriate and represents the type of professionalism that's necessary to do effective work. I would be for giving a waiver to individuals who
15 seconds.
who have disabilities, but I think that it's really important. Thank you so much.
And one more commenter presenting as Alicia Dabney has her hand raised. Would you like to entertain that comment?
Yes.
Alicia, I've sent you a request to unmute. You'll have 1 minute speaking time.
Thank you for the time. My name is Alicia Dabney, and I'm an associate MFT and PCC and also provisional art therapist. I'd also like to add my voice for a yes vote to make telehealth supervision available across all settings, with an added emphasis on moving this legislation forward with urgency. 1 minute doesn't allow us to really address the impacts to individuals, both on the client side and the clinician side, but they would be quite great with a year gap before this legislation goes through. And I also vote for removal of the in-person requirement for supervision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And for the moderator, we have 2 more raised hands. If you'd like to continue with public comment, or if you'd like to check back in with board members.
I do see there is one board input, but if we can wait for the public to comment.
Okay, very well. Then next commenter is Sierra Smith. Sierra, I've sent you a request to unmute, and you will have 1 minute speaking time.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sierra Smith. I'm Executive Director of Open Paths Counseling Center based in Inglewood in Los Angeles County. And I too would really like to ask that the exempt settings remain independent from this. There are so many barriers already, particularly for low income and communities of color, to access clinicians and clients. And it has been such a godsend to be able to do it through telehealth. After 18 months, this genie feels like it's already out of the bottle, and making a requirement across the board for a one-time in-person without all of the other considerations that each of the different agencies are making in terms of how to meet client needs and how to meet
15 seconds.
clinicians' needs, it seems arbitrary. I would like to ask that you keep exempt settings out of this.
And our next public commenter is Miranda Fury. Miranda, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 1 minute speaking time.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, sure. I'm an LCSW, and I appreciate very much the chance to have a voice. I'll go fast with 1 minute. My vote is also yes for telehealth. I have a supervisee who is disabled and homebound. I am disabled and homebound. He cannot host people in his home. So if this is not extended, if there is a gap, he will not be able to move towards licensure simply by virtue of the fact that he happens to work for a private corporation and is homebound. This is a very discriminatory law, and I think it's really would be very wise to make sure that there is a gap covering.
15 seconds.
Make sure there's a gap covering so that the board isn't discriminating, overlooking a law that is discriminatory until it can change. Thank you so much.
And our next commenter is Tiffany Mockler. Tiffany, I will be sending you a request to unmute, and you will have 1 minute speaking time. And there we go.
And I am an LMFT and a supervisor.
I'm sorry, I wanted to comment earlier and I wasn't able to connect. I wanted to start by saying I actually really do agree that in person is a wonderfully beneficial way to handle a lot of supervision and clients. And I'm in the office very regularly with my clients because I do believe it's important. And I don't have time to get into some of the hardships of the people that I supervise, but I wanted to speak for them and that it can cause a lot of hardships on their ends. And I think even though it is more beneficial to have supervision, it's better to have really good clinicians that are providing telehealth than having to find somebody else. So that's what I have. And so I would encourage a yes vote on the telehealth supervision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my apologies. It's possible, Jennifer Alley, I may have dismissed your hand inadvertently. If I did, please raise your hand again. And our next commenter is Dylan Fraley, LCSW. Dylan, I'm going to send you a request on mute.
To reiterate other people's sentiments, I appreciate you considering this option. I would also like to encourage a yes vote to continue virtual supervision with the removal of the in-person meeting. I feel that most clinical supervisors are adequately trained to make that an assessment and should be able to make that determination based on each individual clinical supervisory relationship. Again, thank you all for your time and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Max, Christina got kicked off and she is trying to get readmitted back in. She just texted me.
Yeah, I just saw that. Moderator, is that a way?
Certainly. I'll switch to the screen where I can find her and let her back in. There we go. Thank you for your patience. And we have a number of raised hands. Tiffany Mockler, have you spoken already, or I'll send you a request to unmute in case you have a further comment?
I was just having a hard time trying to figure out which button to push.
Okay.
I addressed.
Thank you. And our next commenter is presenting as Linda. Linda, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone and you'll have 1 minute speaking time.
Yeah. Linda Spinosa, LCSW, supervisor and clinician in private practice and in a hospital setting in LA County. And I also would like my voice to be heard for telehealth supervision and removal of in-person. First time for supervisees and supervisor. I think that with COVID, there's and still numbers in and out of the hospital. We've learned really how to manage with technology and the power of technology here, even amongst our patient population in the hospital with COVID. And I think telehealth and supervision really brought even more learning to our supervisors and social workers and in the field. I do think that it brings a powerful and more accessibility for the patients, supervisees, and
15
a
seconds.
wonderful teaching tool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next commenter is Jennifer Alley. Jennifer, if you would like, I'm sending a request for you to unmute and you will have 1 minute speaking time.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Alley with Camped again. I get a sense that, with the amended motion that there could be a change in the proposal as drafted. And I just wanted to go on record and say Camp doesn't have a strong position either way about the requirement for the one person. The first one in-person meeting within the 60 days that supervision begins. Gosh, that was hard for me to say for some reason today. Sorry. We defer to the board on making that determination. But I did like Roseanne's comments regarding the need to assess the appropriateness for each one of those supervisees to be assessed to determine the appropriateness for them to receive supervision via training. via telehealth. I think it's important, and we may consider, a sunset for 2025 on that assessment once the supervision regulations and this hopefully urgent staff.
And our next commenter identifies as Jennifer Avalos. Jennifer, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 1 minute
My name is
commenting
Jennifer.
time. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Avalos, and I'm an associate clinical social worker. I also am a military social worker. There's 3 things I have to say. First, this creates accessibility to the disability population who are also social workers and other people who practice mental health. This also creates the ability to practice for the military population who are all over the country and don't have the ability to have supervision all over the country in person. And then the third thing is that this creates access to anyone who is
15
in
seconds.
rural areas. Thank you for your time.
Okay, and our next commenter is Gabe. Gabe, I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 1 minute speaking time.
Thanks for hearing me out again, everybody. Gabe Kenny, AMFT. On the in-person presentation note, I understand the instinct to want to see somebody in person and get a sense of them. But for the sake of required brevity, anybody can clean up well for 1 day of a job interview. Since the access to the supervisor is going to be over the course of a longer period of time, and we've already accepted that that period of time after the first initial meeting is going to be remote anyway, a lot of the access to that individual, learning about them, seeing what their scope and their capacity as a therapist is going to be given remote anyway. So given that, I simply just don't understand the purpose of a kind of a first in-person
15
meeting.
seconds.
Also, just clarifying, the option is not necessarily a mandate. And, just wanted to point out that people could take that or not, but just having the tool in the box is the important thing, not thinking that everybody would have to do it. Thank you.
And our next comment is coming from Ben Caldwell. Ben, I'm going to unmute your microphone or send you a request so that you may have 1 minute speaking time.
You can call me Bill if you want, that's okay. Ben Caldwell, licensed MFT. As Mr., and I hope I'm saying this correctly, Ranasingh and Mr. Huff noted, the in-person meeting requirement doesn't meaningfully support public safety. It isn't a requirement for clinical care by telehealth where we can diagnose people as mentally ill, so it doesn't really make sense to require it for supervision. Speaking to Dr. Brew's comment and generally to some of the anxiety we've heard along the way here, including from some people in the surveys, as we heard from the prior comment, no one's required to use video supervision if they don't want to. Employers, universities, and supervisors can and will continue to set whatever requirements and limitations they see fit on the use of video supervision, including the option to not use video at all, if that's what's most appropriate for their setting.
15 seconds.
Not a mandate. Thank you very much.
And our last commenter at this point, at least, is Miranda Fury. Miranda, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone. If you have further comment, you have 1 minute.
Thank you for hearing me a second time. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I am not going to sue the board. I want to be really clear about that. But I really think that if you're going to put any kind of limit on telehealth supervision that has been used for non-exempt settings for years, it needs to be supported by research, or you're really opening up the door for action. One commenter on BBS Facebook, when the waiver was not going to be extended, talked about class action suit. I just think with BBS, I don't want that kind of thing to happen. I feel like it's risky for me to even talk about it because it's such a scary idea. But please, please think about BBS as an agency that supports clients and mental health, and that
15 seconds.
it's not an agency that would take discriminatory law unlightly. Thank you so much for listening to me, and please know that my intentions are very good.
Okay, moderator, I think we are closing the public
Yes.
comments, correct? Yes, we're moving
Correct.
back.
That's all the
Okay.
raised hands. Thank you.
I just feel the need to make a clarification because in a couple of comments came over the idea, perhaps the sense that, with telehealth, you can supervise all over the country, which is not the case. I mean, it's, you're supervising in the state of California, where you're licensed, and that's where you see your clients. So the telehealth doesn't allow you to do a work out of state. I just wanted to make that clear because it came in a couple of comments, and maybe they meant the county, or I'm not sure. But anyway, we're not talking about opening the borders to supervising anyone that's out of states with a different license. Saying that, I see Christina. Then I would like to see if there is a motion on the floor based on the conversation. I will go from there. Thank you, Christina.
And Max, thanks for bringing that up. And I think one of the thing is really about in terms of protecting the consumer. That having that assessment in place. It's really important for the supervisor. To just see the appropriateness. And thanks, Ben, for bringing it up too. I think that is when we're, so micro focused on, how that, allowance is going to work out, and yes, you're right. It doesn't exclude, the in-person assessment. However, if the baseline that we set is so low for, for video conferencing without that even, the requirement, for the people, for the supervisor and supervisor to meet in one time in person, then, then we actually, the baseline will be, will be pretty low. And, which means that, that they can just do the whole time without really seeing each other face to face. And so, so again, I just want to, make sure that we all know that, that, our job really, again, is about consumer protection. We want to make sure that the training and the supervision, that the license, the registrant, the associate gets, are really of competence. And so, so I totally understand, that, the inconvenience issue, and yet I think, the focus really is about we are making legislative changes, and COVID is one, and we actually previously worked really hard, trying to get the supervision packet, to be in place. And so there are a lot of the, the work has done, to try to, really promote a higher level of the supervision. And so that law will come in place in January 1st. And I'm sure that, probably, just a person with knowing the history, that, I think the focus is really about how do we make sure that the quality of the supervision, is really there. And so just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. John, and then there is me.
So one thing that did come up in a lot of the feedback from the public is we've actually been in the middle of a living, breathing experience of this actual policy for the last 2 years. And from what we've noticed and we've been hearing from them is that it has not interfered with the quality of supervision. I don't know if, Steve, you've been receiving any notifications of challenges, of people feeling, that it has not worked. But almost everybody they were hearing from is saying, we have been doing this very thing without meeting in person, doing it all by telehealth for the last 2 years, and it has proven to be incredibly successful. Personally, I am with Christina. I love meeting my people in person first. But I think there's a reality we need to look at that is not always possible. We have tried this already. There's also a sunset on this particular legislation, which means that we can revisit it after we see it in motion and say, wow, there are some concerns that have shown up, and we can rewrite it at that time. I think it's more important to move ahead with this as quickly as we can, understanding that there is going to be this gap no matter how quickly we move. And then one final question for Steve, because I want to make sure, because I heard this a lot too. BBS is not who made the waivers. We're the ones who announced them, but they're done by the governor's office and the DCA. Is that not correct?
That's correct. The governor, under the state of emergency, the governor gives the director the actual authority to do the waivers. So once the emergency waiver is done, then the director can't do any sort of waivers. So we don't really have any power over that.
I just wanted to clarify for that to the public, because I know the BBS is the piece of the puzzle that gets that information out, but we are just implementing policies that are handed to us about the waivers in most cases.
And just as a side note, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just to answer your question, I haven't heard, I haven't really heard any kind of, I don't like to use the word chatter, of like issues and that's not saying there are issues out there, but I have not heard them. And then my concern for, passing this forward is definitely to keep the pipeline open for therapists to get through the process. I mean, so it definitely helps out with that. And then, yeah, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I just wanted to share the same concerns that the public has shared. I mean, as a public member, usually I'm obviously very interested about the public's, the consumers' protections, but actually I see on this a lot of consumer protections too, because we don't have enough data to show that the non-in-person first meeting actually is causing damage to the relationships between the clinicians and the supervisor and the newly hired clinician. And I understand, I'm not a clinician, so I understand that there is power in that meeting, but at the same time, I see the, even in the area where we operate here in Southern California, the damage that it could cause actually a barrier, an additional barrier to movement, to the possibility actually to operate more, from long distance. I don't think that actually will, it has been working in the past 2 years. I think that will be actually beneficial. And I feel that that outweighs the risks of possible challenging when it comes to consumer protections, to hire the person that perhaps is not fully qualified for the job. I see more the risks in the other way, in the other way. So I don't know if Roseanne, there was an attempt to motion, so I don't want to steal the thunder from Kelly. I see you raising the hands, but we had a motion that was going in that direction to approve, with the exception of the first in-person meeting. How do we word that if we had to have a motion on the floor? Thank you.
Yeah, Max, I think that what I'm hearing at this point is we want to take a really direct look at the language. It's in the packet in attachment A. So I would suggest that we do that at this time. I do want to clarify and piggyback on one thing, Max, that you said earlier about the out-of-state practice. I want to clarify that it would, under this, it not allowing the supervision to be in person would allow somebody to register as an associate in California and practice from another state. Associates are allowed to practice via telehealth. So where they're located right now, the law says nothing about that, and they could get their supervision via video conferencing. So if somebody needed to move to New York or something, that they could, in theory, be registered as an AM. They could, not in theory, they could be registered as an AMFT, and if this were allowed, they could get supervision from a California licensee and practice with clients in California. They could not practice with clients in their home state of New York.
Exactly.
So
right.
I want to make sure that everybody understands that correctly, so that there's no misunderstanding of what this did. So we would allow that, whereas right now that's not as much. That's not really allowed because there's that in-person requirement. So the supervisor and the person have to meet, and that's not possible if the associate is in New York. So that could be a positive or a negative, depending on who you are and how you look at it. It might allow people from other states to gain a license here and be able to practice remotely here. If you believe in in-person supervision, that's not an option. So that might be a bad thing for some people's opinions too. So it just depends on how you look at it. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that, has an understanding of that. And then,
I appreciate that, Roseanne. Thank you so much for clarifying. I also want to say, though, that even California has thousands of miles of border. People are living few miles from any border of the state of California. So even the in-person qualification can be done from someone from out of state because maybe they're 50 miles away. So the problem really doesn't, is not deleting that possibility, that people might do that. Okay, so Kelly, you had an original motion in place. Would you like to represent the motion, or are you changing it, or where are
Sure.
we?
Here's what I'm going to do, and Roseanne, can you follow along with me?
Sure.
I'm going to move to accept the recommendation delineated in. I'm going to read it, so don't get mad at me yet. The recommendation on page XX3, we've conducted an open discussion about draft language contained in attachment A. The resolution is to direct staff to make any discussed changes and any non-substantive changes pursue as a legislative proposal with urgency, but and I'm going to delineate the language very clearly. So page XX6, subdivision D, second line, delete the word in person. Going down to the last line of subdivision D, delete the word in person. Going to page XX7, subdivision C, first and second line, delete the word in person. Going down to subdivision D, delete the word in person. Last line of subdivision D, on page XX7, delete the word in person. Going to page XX9, subdivision C, delete the word in person. Subdivision D, page XX9. Second line, delete the word in person. And last line of subdivision D on page XX9, delete the word in person. Have I missed anything, Roseanne?
Let me take a quick look. Hang on just a second.
And that'll actually keep the assessment.
I agree with you, Kelly. Yes. The only thing I would change about the motion is I would amend the direction to be to pursue a legislative proposal that is urgency if possible. That way we can still run it if urgency is not possible.
So moved.
I second that. That was me, Max.
Yes.
Diana,
Thank you, Diana. Then we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? And okay, so at this point, I ask Christina Kitamura to ask for the vote.
Okay, Deborah Brown.
I'm going to vote yes, but I'd like to state why. I think this is a very difficult decision to make because I've heard both arguments and I've been around through the whole process for the last years on making sure that we protect the public. And I understand why those things were put in place, but there's nothing to say that they can't continue to do that if they think that's what's important for them. But as somebody said in the public comment, the genie has been out of the bottle for almost 2 years now, and it's not going back in. Telehealth, teleremote, everything is where it's headed until or if something should happen. And the data, like someone else mentioned, the research, we don't have that. Until the data says otherwise, this is one grand experiment. So with that, I vote yes.
Max, can I say something before we move on?
Yes, go ahead, Roseanne.
I would just like to, and I think that we need to take public comment again since we did make amendments. So I'll just.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
A couple of things. I think piggybacking on what Deborah said, that is why if you look at subdivision H, she's absolutely right. There is still more that needs to be discussed, the out-of-state aspect, for example, and that's why we have the sunset date. In subdivision H, that allows the telehealth committee to keep discussing this and how it's working. I also wanted to, I was thinking, in looking at subdivision D, where it says within 60 days of commencement of any supervision, a supervisor shall conduct an initial meeting with each supervisee. We took out the word in person. I'm wondering if we should take out the word initial also, because within 60 days and initial are kind of contradictory. Yeah. So I wanted to discuss that maybe a little bit more, and then I think we need to have public comment.
Well, Roseanne, whoever made the motion, just for procedures, I mean, Kelly, if you adopt that into the motion, those changes, then we're good to go. And I would like to move to the public comments from the public. And then we'll go.
Modify the motion to delete the word initial.
Okay, and whoever seconded, Diana, do you agree as well? Are you still seconding the motion?
Yep, still seconding.
Okay, so the motion stands with those unsubstantial changes that Roseanne just brought up.
Yeah, it's a non-substantive.
And then we are moving to the public comments. Moderator, if you can please open up. Thank you. And I will suggest only one person, one comment, because really we're trying to end the board meeting today. So want to make sure that everyone is heard, but if we can stick to one comment for one person and not 2 comments per person, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Certainly. So I've opened up the Q&A feature of WebEx. There should be a box with a question mark in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen, or if you're on a handheld device, you can click the 3 dots icon for other options, and there should be a Q&A button behind that screen. We do have one request to speak from Ben Caldwell. Ben, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone, and then we will give you 1 minute speaking time, and there is one person after you as well. One moment. Okay, Ben, I sent you your request.
Thank you very much. Ben Caldwell, MFT. This is very much a technical question about the proposed amendments. There are some, and I hope that your pagination here is the same as mine, there are some that make perfect sense in terms of, like, paragraph D on page XX9 makes perfect sense to remove in-person from that. Some of the other proposed changes, like removing in-person from paragraph C on page XX9, don't make sense to me, because that paragraph spells out just that supervision would be a combination of in-person and video. So I don't know that those are necessary, but I wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly what is being proposed. Thank you.
Roseanne, would you like to speak to that if you feel keen to?
So yeah, I guess it did get set on 4999. We only want to make the changes. We do not want to strike in person on subsection C of any of the things of what's said. I think it got said for the LCSW and the LPCC law, but not the LMFT. So there are no proposed changes. We don't want to make any proposed changes to subdivision C. We want to make changes to subdivision D for each license type only. And that would be striking an initial in-person in subdivision D in each place. And then in the last sentence of subdivision D, it's striking in-person in each place. So no changes to subdivision C anywhere, because that subdivision C is basically saying that supervisor contact can either be in person or be via video conferencing. So we don't want to change that. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So it would be make the discussed changes to the subdivision D only. And if you want, I can read the subdivision aloud so that everybody's on the same page.
Please go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So for 4980.43.2, for 4996.23.1, and 4999.46.2, the language would read to state, notwithstanding subdivision C, on January 1, 2023, within 60 days of the commencement of any supervision, a supervisor shall conduct a meeting with each new supervisee. During that meeting, the supervisor shall assess both of the following. 1, the appropriateness of allowing the supervisee to gain experience hours via telehealth. 2, the appropriateness of allowing the supervisee to receive supervision via two-way real-time video conferencing. The results of this assessment shall be documented by the supervisor.
Thank you, Roseanne. Moderator, I would like to proceed if there are any other questions and to finish with the public comments. And Steve, do you want to interject now? I mean, John, sorry.
Roseanne, quick technical question. In what you just read, you said January 1st, 2023. If we get the expedited stuff and we do hit a July deadline, will that cause us a problem?
If it became effective earlier, then they would not have to do the assessment. That's a good point. I don't know, Sabina, I don't know how that we would account for an earlier effective date on that though.
Could that be an amendment as it goes through the process?
Hear me now?
Even if
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I had to change my microphone again. I was trying to think of a way to maybe use, delegate that authority to staff and the EO to adjust that issue dependent upon whether or not emergency is granted.
What if we just got rid of the date? And if it was, could we do that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Or yeah.
Because if we got rid of the date, then when the section became effective, if like, let's say it became effective some random day in July, if we don't have the date, then that's the day it's effective.
Sabina, can I set the termination condition on the motion?
Excuse me?
Would that work? Would it work to set a condition precedent or a termination condition on the motion? That if something happened, then staff could simply modify it?
And part of that, if that's delegated to the staff to adjust in terms of if urgency legislation is granted or not, then something to that effect. What will be removed or what will not be removed?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking or offering. If you'd like me to do that,
I'm kind of thinking that the January, so even if the purpose of the January 1, 2023 date was to kind of give a starting point when that assessment had to be done. So everybody's doing it right now. And it kind of gives people time. So it's basically intended to be some lead time. So for new supervisory relationships after this date, you're required to do this assessment.
I would recommend getting rid of the date because we were originally talking about also the in-person visit. So the assessment should be a little bit simpler than the in-person visit. So 60 days.
Okay.
Whenever it goes into effect, I think that should be fine, in my opinion. I think.
So
and then it causes us to have to go back and actually get rid of that date later on.
So I think that we would strike on and after January 1, 2023. So it would read, notwithstanding subdivision C, within 60 days of the commencement of any supervision, a supervisor shall conduct, and then it goes on from there. Does that work for everybody? And then that means that the day that this becomes effective, anybody who has a new supervisee after the effective date would need to conduct that within 60 days.
Works for me.
Yes. Okay. Okay, we were going to, before we call the vote, Christina, I see you appearing. We go back to the public because we were with the moderator making sure that there are not public comments on the changes that we made on the motion. Moderator, please. Thank you.
Yes, and we have one more raised hand from Miranda Fury. So Miranda, I am sending you a request to unmute and you will have 1 minute to comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My previous two comments were, kind of intense and were more directed towards the concerns about the gap. I hope that the board and other agencies will continue to advocate around the gap issue, but I wanted to take a second to say thank you. I really appreciate how responsive the board has been to public concerns and to clinical concerns and client safety, that you're doing emergency legislation and, very responsively, and just feeling very appreciative of the board and appreciative of the motion that's been put. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that is it for public comments at this time. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're back to the board. Unless there are any other comments on the motion that was submitted by Kelly and second by Diana. I see you, John. Chris. I'm start calling different names. Chris, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the motion.
Sure.
So the only thing that got changed in the motion was taking out the I'm sorry, let me back up. That you're taking out the in-person component. That's the only part that's changed. The sunset's still there. The 60-day assessment is still there. We just simply pulled out the, okay, all right.
And the in on or after January 1, 2023.
So explain that part to me, Roseanne, if you would.
So there's no start date. It just starts when the legislation becomes effective.
Oh, right. Okay.
So yeah, the only changes were to subdivision D of each of the three sections, and that's taking out the January 1, 2023 date. We're taking out the initial in-person part component of the meeting, and that's it. The sunset date is still there. Yes.
Okay. All right. And just to add one more comment, I know that this has been a hot topic and we've done a lot of work on it, and I might be delusional, but I still do feel that the in-person is important, and I'm struggling with it a little bit from the clinical side, and I know that I'm old school with that too. So the sunset date, I think, is the thing that's allowing me to look at moving forward with it, because at least it gives us a test period that we can really fully come back and reevaluate without having to fully start over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Any other comments? Otherwise, we're going to vote. Okay.
I would like to ask for, I feel like I have a motion that's pieced together. Can I get Roseanne or Sabina to structure a more formal motion for the minutes?
Sure. I will make a new motion. So it would be to direct staff to make any discussed changes and any non-substantive changes and pursue as a legislative proposal that's urgency if possible. And the discussed changes are all to subdivision D of each of the three sections in question. And it is, I will read the section again, subdivision D. It reads, notwithstanding subdivision C, within 60 days of the commencement of any supervision, a supervisor shall conduct a meeting with each new supervisee. During that meeting, the supervisor shall assess both of the following. 1, the appropriateness of allowing the supervisee to gain experience hours via telehealth. 2, the appropriateness of allowing the supervisee to receive supervision via two-way real-time video conferencing. The results of this assessment shall be documented by the supervisor. Period. So that's the change.
Thank you, Roseanne. And if you're ready for a vote, I'll take that now.
Yes, please. Let's go.
Deborah Brown?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Diana Hurwitz?
Yes.
Justin Huff?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
No.
Sorry, Chris, could you repeat that one more time?
No.
Kelly Ranasinghe?
Yes.
John Sovak?
Yes.
Christina Wong?
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Very difficult conversation. I'm sure we will have more of this, but hopefully not today, because now we actually move into the next item agenda, number 21.
Max?
Yes.
Could I put one thing out there too? I know some changes were made that didn't take into regard all of the work that the telehealth community committee has done so far, but I do want to recognize them for really doing all of the deep work and the groundwork on this. Because without all of the homework they had done, we would not have been able to have this really challenging discussion and move forward with the bill. So I just really want to recognize all of their hard work on this, because it really took a lot to even get the groundwork of this in place. And that includes you, Roseanne.
John, I totally second that. Thank you for taking the time to say that, but that's absolutely true. We wouldn't be able to know what we know today if it wasn't for the work the committee has done. So, and the contribution of those that participated, even from the public in those committees. So thank you for reiterating that.
Max,
yes.
Can I just, I'm sorry, yes. Can I just also add all of the work, the 3 years of the supervision committee that added into that discussion for telehealth. That was quite an undertaking, and you can see it all in that legislation. It all comes back.
I agree with you, Debbie. If there was a motion, I would have asked for amending the motion.
No, I'm just
saying. Include that. But I appreciate that comments. Absolutely. Thank you. So we're moving to item 21. I believe now we have Christy Berger joining us for the report and the updates on board sponsors and monitor legislations. Am I correct? Christy?
That's me, Max.
You, Roseanne? Okay. Of course I'm not correct. So Roseanne will continue to join us for item 21, and we'll see Christy later.
Christy's next after this.
Yes.
So yes, we had the legislative session ended October 10th was the deadline for the governor to sign any bills on his desk. So we have a lot of new laws coming into effect. Our practice setting definition bill was signed by the governor, and that provides us some specific practice setting definitions and makes some changes regarding supervision in private practices and professional corporations, also ups the limit in non-exempt settings for supervisees per supervisor to 6. And so that's gone through. SB 801 was the board sunset omnibus bill, MFT scope of practice bill. So the omnibus portion of that bill was included in there. The provision in SB 801 was extended the board sunset date to January 1, 2026. So that's been signed. That's in that bill. And also CAMP placed a provision that they were sponsoring in that bill to update and clarify the MFT scope of practice. So that was all rolled up into SB 801, and that was signed by the governor. AB 462 is the Licensed Professional Clinical Counselor Act. That makes some changes regarding requirements for LPCC applicants to gain 150 hours of clinical experience in a hospital or community mental health setting. It deleted that requirement, and also the additional education and CE for LPCCs to treat couples and families. That was signed. The board had a support position on the bill. A bill was signed that clarifies or places some responsibilities on licensees regarding prescribing or writing certificates for need of an emotional support animal. And we also had a bill signed about temporary licenses for veterans and military spouses. And so we've worked really hard to do FAQs, and those are all, as of yesterday, up on the website. So if you know any licensees or you are a licensee or registrant, please take a look at that. We've also got an FAQ up there about our supervision changes. And then also one other bill that the board did not have a position on, but I wanted to update you on. SB 14 was signed by the governor. That's the bill that adds an absence for the benefit of a pupil's mental health or behavioral health to excuse school absences. That was also signed by the governor. That is the legislative update.
Oh, I did that. Wonderful, Roseanne. Thank you. That was super fast. And now we're moving to, there are any, not comments, but any questions?
No question, but I just want to congratulate Deborah and myself. We work on the practice setting, for the exam setting committee. So finally, after 3 years plus the hard work, the legislation finally come in place. And so, so yeah, I just want to, take this opportunity to thank, Deborah, and way back when, Roseanne helped so much. And actually, not just Roseanne, but it's Christy, helped so much, with that practice setting. And there are a lot more to work, so it's a wonderful way to, have the committee, and then go to the PNA and then come to the full board and then signed by the governor. So a lot happened in between. Yeah, thank you. Okay,
No,
Max want to
thank
shut
you.
me up, so I'm gonna
I see a lot to be proud of. I share the sentiment of the hard work because this bill takes a long time to go through, and they go through so many revisions, and then 3 years go by, and we almost forgot where we started. And so, thank you for pointing that out, Christine. Thank you for your work on that. Okay, so if there are no other questions, we can move to item 22. Update on board rulemaking proposal, and now we have actually Christy introducing that to us.
Yes, thank you. So this will be really brief too. So as we've talked about throughout the meeting, our supervision related regulations are going into effect January 1st, 2022. There is one component that's phased in, and that's the supervisor self-assessment that becomes submitted to the board. Current supervisors have a year. They'll have until January 1, 2023 to submit that. But everything else takes effect January 1. And as Roseanne mentioned, we have an informational document on our website, and we're also preparing some PowerPoints that will kind of provide, in place of a video. We thought about doing a video, but we don't have much time to do it. So, and it's time consuming. So we're doing hopefully a snazzy PowerPoint that will, one for supervisors and one for supervisees, and we're doing some other outreach as well. On our continuing education regulations, actually I have an update from when I wrote the memo. These are now at the Office of Administrative Law, and they are set to be noticed to the public on November 12th. So watch for that initial notice, and then we'll be taking the public comment, possibly be bringing some changes back to the board after public comment. So be watching for that. Our enforcement process regulations are still pending. These are the ones that we had started years ago and had to hold aside due to some legislation that had passed. And we have a new manager of our probation unit, and she's working with the staff to take another whole look at this proposal. It's pretty detailed, and see what other changes they might want. And then our last regulation package pending is just some technical changes that have not been a very high priority at this point, and I'm hoping to get these early next year. And that's all I have.
Wonderful. Christy, thank you so much. A lot of work behind this as well. So thanks for the investigative efforts as well. And,
you're very welcome.
Any questions about this item? Okay. I think now we're opening the discussion and possible actions on the 2022 and 2026 strategic plan. I believe is introduced by Steve, right?
Yes, I'll take this one. Just one more. This is one last piece of business for us to do today. And so just kind of give you a background as you all were involved in this. We began the strategic planning process in February 2021. That is because our current plan is going to end this year. So what we did is we worked with SOLID, the Department of Consumer Affairs SOLID program, and they kind of guided us through the process. The first part of that was completing an environmental scan. 13 board members were interviewed, and the management team at the board was also interviewed. And then they also did an online survey, which we got great response in the online survey. We had 1,900 plus stakeholders actually comment, and 11 staff. I got to talk to the staff about that. There should have been more, but anyway, we got good feedback, kind of the environmental scan to see some of the possible improvements that we can do. Additionally, part of this process is we had 2 board meetings, September 9th and October 4th, where we talked about possible objectives for each of the strategic goals that we have in our strategic plan. So what we're looking at today and what we've provided is the draft version of the strategic plan. There are some pieces missing, like the board chair introduction, so we'll get that filled out later. But this is kind of the work that we've done over the past, I guess, gosh, the past year. That draft form is what's in front of you. And what I'm hoping today is that you will approve this so that we can move forward with kind of finalizing it. And then be able to present this at our first board meeting in February. What I will actually, in February, not only will you have the nice finalized form of the strategic plan, but I'm hoping we will begin working with Solid to actually working on looking at the tasks for all the objectives that we've come up with and establishing due dates. And so from then, February on, what we will have is a structured strategic plan report on every quarter board meeting, and we can really keep tabs on how we're doing on all those objectives. So today, this draft version is before you to approve and to, ask staff to move forward on finalizing it. So, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, amazing work has been done behind. I was very impressed with the public participation, which, we always say strategic plans are not so exciting to work on for people from outside, so to speak, because there is always that element of, the variety of things and objectives, that we put together. But it's incredibly, it's signing the directions of the board for the next 5-6 years. So it's so nice to see the public participation. So kudos to the staff for allowing these documents to be a living documents and not just something it's there just because we had to do it. I think it really reflects on your leadership, Steve, but also how much the staff has made sure that, the board could really put the pieces together to make this happen. So I'm really, really excited. And said that, any other comments or considerations? I know we've seen it a few times. Christina Wong.
I would actually make a motion to accept the draft of the strategic plan.
Okay.
I'd like to second it.
Wonderful. Deborah Brown. I believe that I need to go to the public with this? Yes, I believe so, right, Steve?
This is Sabina. Yeah. Max, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you also in your motion, if anyone is so inclined, to include the delegation to make any non-substantive changes, and also to include the missing introduction from the board chair?
Yes.
I will make that amendment for that motion that Sabina just said.
Thank you. And then yes, public comment on the motion.
And I second that.
Wonderful. Thank you. And moderator, if we can go to the public and see if there are any comments or inputs.
Certainly. We've opened the Q&A feature of WebEx. So if you'd like to comment on the draft strategic plan, you can look for the Q&A icon, often in the lower right corner of your screen, a box with a question mark or a Q&A logo, and type the word comment into the text box and hit send. And then when prompted, you will unmute yourself and you'll have 1 minute speaking time. Give people a moment to locate that part of the WebEx interface. And I see no request for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Thank you so much. Yes. Yes.
Super.
Wonderful. So we're coming back to the board, and we have a motion on the floor from Christina, seconded by Ms. Brown. And I believe we can call for the vote unless there are any other comments. Okay, Christina.
Okay, Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Diana Hurwitz,
Yes.
Justin Huff,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasingi,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Christina Wong,
Yes.
motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you. Really, really exciting. We are now moving to item 24, which is public comments for items that are not on the agenda. This is the time where our board members can suggest future agenda items. I know I have one because I think we miscalculated the time, but we will have to elect a new vice chair next board meeting. Because with the exit of Miss Wong as a vice chair, we need to nominate a new board chair, so a new board vice chair. And so we will definitely have conversations before then in terms of any possible, nomination. But I don't have any particular other agenda items. Anyone else? No.
This is Sabina. I think maybe we might have missed the public comment for items not on the agenda.
No, I haven't missed it yet.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought this was next. Sorry.
So I'm public comments on the agenda, yeah, and I'm moving to the public comments. So I'm asking the board members if there are any suggestions.
Sorry, I thought you were taking future agenda items. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Oh, right, that's why, because the way I worded it sounded like that. Yeah, totally my fault. Thank you. That's why. Thank you, Sabina. You can tell it's the end of the day.
Sorry.
No, but thank you. I was totally going on a roll. But so yeah, public comments for items not in the agenda, which has nothing to do with suggestions for future items on the agenda. So I withdraw what I said at this moment. I will repropose it later. But are there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature of WebEx. If anyone has any comments on items that have not been on this agenda, you can click on the Q&A icon in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen and type the word comment in the text box and hit send. And each person will have 1 minute for their suggestion of comment of items not on the agenda.
Thank you, moderator.
You're welcome. I see no comments for items not on the agenda. I can close the Q&A.
Wonderful. And now we're coming back to item 25 for suggestions for future items, agenda items. And I reiterate that we should certainly add an item that will decide who's the next vice chair is going to be. As you can tell, I need it already. And so that's my suggestion. Any other suggestion from the board? Yes, Kelly.
I'd like to add an agenda item for exploration of a needs-based waiver for catastrophic incidents regarding licensees. We have something similar in the state bar where, if a licensee has to renew their license or they have to provide a license fee and they have a catastrophe, like they suddenly go unemployed for, a year due to a disaster. There's a special fund that the board can use to either excise that application fee or renewal fee. And I'd just like to have staff maybe explore that. So that's just my suggestion for a future agenda item.
Thank you, Kelly. Very interesting. Actually, maybe I might suggest that before the next board meeting, we can talk to staff and see if there is already something in place or something that we need to be aware of. But thank you. Thanks for proposing that. Anything else? Susan.
I would be very interested if we could somehow hear from all of the clients out there who have been doing telehealth, how they feel. And the only way I can think that we can do that, excuse my voice, gets hoarse in the afternoon, would be maybe on the Facebook Friday thing. I don't know how we would do it otherwise. We might put a question on the website and just ask people if they would like to leave a comment someplace about how they feel telehealth has worked for them. Not from the point of view of the people who we license, but from the point of view of the people who are being treated by the licensees. Would it work
Thanks.
to do it on
Oh.
Friday, on Facebook Friday? I don't know, Steve
Sus-
may know that.
Maybe what we can do, because we are suggesting items in the agenda, I would like to move this possible conversation outside from this item, and maybe we can, Susan, we can consult with staff and see what would be the best way to brainstorm something like that. We are always welcome to reach out to Steve to have some ideas, and maybe they're already doing that. So, but for items in the agenda, obviously that's a suggestion. So anything else? Okay, I would like to move to the public inputs for items not in the agenda. Moderator, thank you.
You're welcome. So I've opened up the Q&A feature and instructions are on the screen. If you would like to make a suggestion for a future agenda item for this Board of Behavioral Sciences. And I do have one request for comment from Jennifer Alley. Jennifer, I will be sending you a request to unmute and you will have 1 minute to make your comment.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Alley with California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. I'm not sure if this is appropriate for the board or the licensing committee, but we would like to have, as part of the 6-year rule discussion, a possible exemption for medical leaves and military service. And we would also like to have a discussion about life coaches working in professional corporations and if that's allowed and what a rubric to ensure public protection and people practicing without a license don't occur in those situations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for proposing that. I don't want to answer. I believe that's for the licensing committee, but I don't want to let staff articulate that. But I believe that will go under that, right, Steve? That suggestion. But thank you. Thanks so much. I believe we do not have any others, right, moderator?
That's correct. No other requests for public comment.
So we can close the public portion.
Certainly.
Thank you. Moderator, thank you for being with us throughout the day. You've been so helpful as always. We really thank you.
You're very welcome.
And fellow board member, we are actually adjourning the board meeting at 2:53 p.m. And hopefully we can see some of you in person next year. Who knows? It's all to have, we had to see that if it's going to happen, but that will be sometimes in January. I know we have a date. I just don't have it right here now, but we'll meet sometimes in January. Steve, you have the dates already with you?
February 22nd, I believe, is going to be.
So it's not in January. Okay. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. We're ending this public session. Thank you again, Christina Wong and Miss Brown for being with us. And we're hopefully seeing you again in any other, committees and to get your inputs. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Bye.